I'm here with Mathiasen, who's a newly turned pro MMA fighter. And so Danny, your background is actually from traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences training in Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, Jiu-Jitsu is martial arts original from Japan, where the samurais in the medieval times were fighting with swords, and in order to be a good fighter, they needed to have a system to fight. So they invented Jiu-Jitsu, and the way that Jiu-Jitsu was then is very different from how it is today. In the 1960s, the Jiu-Jitsu came to Europe, where the German military adopted the Jiu-Jitsu, and the German police and took the techniques that they thought was good to fighting terrorists and develop on them. So when you train Jiu-Jitsu, you train three different kinds of sports. You train Aikido, which is a lot of locks that originally come from the medieval times in Japan, where you're fighting with swords. So you would grab the opponent's hand. If he got a sword, you would grab his hand, and then you'll do the lock in order to remove the sword from his hand.
Yes.
And then you had the judo, which is like grappling. When you were fighting, also in the medieval times, often if you get in close combat, you can't strike this, so you will be grappling, and then you try to throw the opponent. And of course, when you get him on the ground, you will do some kind of submission attempt a lot. And the last thing that Jiu-Jitsu is a part of is karate, which is the fair fight with hands and feet, where you punch and kick. And today, when you do Jiu-Jitsu, you have like two systems. You have the one with the belts, where everyone wants to have the black belt. And then you do a lot of techniques, and you learn to do things with your partner that it's mostly for show off. It doesn't work in the real world. And then you have the sport Jiu-Jitsu, which is like a point system, where you get point for scoring you get a point for hitting the opponent with the punch or the kick, you get a point for throwing him to the ground, the grabbing part, and then you get a point for control on the ground, and you get a point for submission. And if you submit the guy on the ground, then you get stand up, and you start from new, and then you score points. So that's how it evolved today to become a sport for points rather than a sport for killing.
So when the samurai used the Aikido part of Jiu-Jitsu, it was actually for self-defense. But what were the circumstances which made it work back then, if you say it doesn't work now these days?
Well, it was for self-defense, but it was also when you're going to combat, you're not going there for self-defense, you're going there to kill the opponent. And when you go in with full armor and sword and you're fighting, if you get into close combat and you get a hold of the opponent, well, then it's easier to make a lock on an opponent that's maybe not that mobile because of armor and still. And when you can make the lock, you can make him drop his weapon, or you can make him go to the floor. But it works back then, but it's like a last resort, because you'd rather be hitting someone with your sword than you would be trying to grab them. So it's like the last thing to go to. But when I say it doesn't work today, is because if I'm trying to make a lock on you, well, you will pull your arm back, and I'll have a hard time doing the lock, and you will hit me with the other hand. So it's mostly for show. So,
and obviously, if I wore heavy armor or something, you'd have a little more time.
Yeah, the fight will be a little bit slower if you're wearing heavy armor, and it's a whole other circumstance you're in when you're fighting a medieval fight in Japan than if you're fighting on the street today. But the locks, they work no matter, but it's mostly work on people who are unaware of what you're doing, or drunken people who are a little bit slow, because as soon as somebody grabs my wrist, then I'll pull my arm back and I'll start defending myself, and then it's very hard to make the lock if I'm all tight.
That's my same experience. Whenever I try to do these things, which are a big part of Kung Fu as well, they never work in sparring. The strikes do, and of course it's with the resisting prepared opponent. So if you want to make them work, you need to keep in mind that it must come as a complete surprise, and it's like very that's much better
random guy on the street.
Yeah, but that's the lesson, kids watching.
No, if you're watching the UFC or Ultimate Fighting or something like that, then you see they're using what works, because that's a fighting situation with almost no rules. Then they're gonna adapt the fighting to almost no rules. They're gonna use what works. You never in a UFC fight, you never see anybody use a wrist lock, and it's because it doesn't work in real fight.
Yeah. So you transitioned from Jiu-Jitsu into MMA, and if you try and go back, can you tell us a bit about what that experience was like?
Well, I fought Jiu-Jitsu since I was a little kid, and I always loved fighting and watched all the ninja movies and Jackie Chan and the Ninja Turtles, and I was really in love with martial arts. And I turned around the whole world fighting Jiu-Jitsu, and I won the first place at the World Games, which is the same as the Olympic Games, but except that the sports that are not big enough to be an Olympic sport, they are in the World Games instead. So after I won that, I felt like, okay, now I've been doing this, I want to do something new. And when you're fighting Jiu-Jitsu, it's like, you know, it's not full contact, it's only semi, you only mark the points. And I wanted to try to be in a real fight, to say, okay, now this is for real, now I can punch through.
To test yourself.
Yeah, to test myself, because normally if you punch through in Jiu-Jitsu, the referee will stop you and say, full contact, you're disqualified. But I wanted to try with as few rules as possible. So that was a real good transition, so it's quite fun. One of the biggest thing for me was that in Jiu-Jitsu, the sports Jiu-Jitsu, you're not allowed to punch directly to the face, and that's to avoid damage in the face. It's a sport. But in MMA, of course, you can punch to the face. So when I started the transition, in the beginning I was like all blood nose and blue eyes, because I was jumping in all the punches all the time. That was actually one of the biggest things for me, was to keep my hands up and be aware for the straight punches. And no shit, it's the simplest of things that works the most effective. So straight jab, best technique ever.
Interesting. So that must have been a learning experience, and I can see you still have some scar tissue.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that scar?
Well, I got a scar here in November, and that was because I had a fight against a strong Jiu-Jitsu guy, and I was kicking the crap out of him. It doesn't look like that, but I was winning the fight. But at some point, I move forward to punch him, and when I move forward, my head goes a little bit down because of bad technique, and I'm tired, you know. And at the same time I hit him, he's falling backwards, but he's trying to kick me, so he raised his knee, and then I got hit in the face with his knee, and I got like all the way down, it teared open. But you know, I got hit, I said, okay, fuck it, I grabbed his leg, and I threw him, and I punched him, and he got up, and then I punched him some more, but damage was done. I was open all the way down, so I was just bleeding all over the place. I had blood everywhere, and the referee had to stop the fight, and I had my I had a loss, unfortunately, but I was ready to go on, but it was the right call for the doctor to make, because it was a big cut, and if I was unlucky, it could go into the eye, so he said, okay, we have to stop the fight. I know, they know that I was winning the fight, but you have to be concerned about your own safety.
Yeah. Another part of your transitioning into the world of MMA, as a traditional martial artist, I notice people tend to have stereotypes, both positive and negative. And it's like some people see you as like a vicious guy, and some people see you as a peaceful guy, but I'm pretty sure when you go into something like MMA, the whole peaceful stereotype isn't there. But I guess you can tell us a lot more about what do people think about you when they hear
Well, in my personal life, when I meet new people and they don't meet me through my sport or something like that, then they're very surprised that I do mixed martial arts and full combat sport, because I look so nice and I'm so sweet and I talk so good, and why do you do something so vicious, mean and evil? You don't look like the guy. But I think the guys who are coming to martial arts to fight and to hurt other people, they don't last. They stop because when it gets hard, they don't want to do it anymore. So instead, you end up with people who are interested in martial arts. You end up with people who are interested in learning and moving and fighting. And to be fighting is a normal part of human life, to fight. So I think I would say that we have all kinds of people in here. We have, I'm a school teacher, and we have a guy who works at the bank, and we have carpenters, and we have all kinds of professionals who are training in here. So it's not like they're not all bald and tattooed and looks like mean monsters. Of course, there are a few guys who are like that, but most of the guys are normal guys or girls who just want to have fun and like to fight and train.
And I think for sure we all have some sort of combative instinct, like both guys and girls. Not everyone explores it, but yeah, it's a good point to make that it can be all kinds of people doing something like this.
Yeah, and in my experience, I never met a guy who was good at martial arts, who was like a mean person outside, or was like a stupid motherfucker that you didn't want to talk to, because when you train, you learn a lot about respecting each other's boundaries and knowing how hard to push each other. And once you have been fighting with a guy, you know, then you kind of make a special kind of friendship, because you don't want to be angry against someone who you know, I'm gonna be fighting him tomorrow at sparring, or I'm gonna be training with him the next day, because you have to have a basic trust to each other, that you don't hurt each other, and then you respect the other's limits.
The more you're able to do, the more important it becomes with restraint and to know when not to do it, for sure, I think. Now, you mentioned a bit about you actually work as a school teacher alongside this recently turned professional career in MMA.
Yeah.
So, and we already talked about stereotypes and reactions, but can you tell us a bit about the kids at school? How do they respond to this?
Well, most of the kids, they're interested in themselves, so they're like, okay, it's cool and it's the funny news for maybe a day or two, but then they tend to forget about it, because in kids' lives there are so many other things that matter, and they're not thinking about their teachers all the time. But when I talk with the kids, and if they are telling me what they think, then they think it's really cool. Oh, I got a teacher who can fight. That's cool. It's a cool thing to have, I think. Yeah. So of course, they get a lot of the time they get surprised, but everybody gets surprised when I tell them what I'm doing, because normally I'm like neat, I'm dressed well, and I look decent normally. I don't look like a fuck or like a badass. I actually look quite decent and quite
respectful.
Respectful, yeah.
Yeah. So just a final thing, because with these sort of things you get a lot of adrenaline, both self-defense situations and combative sports. Yeah. So how much do you actually feel of the impact when you're in the ring? Like,
well, a lot of people ask me if it hurts to fight, and well, it can hurt, but mostly it doesn't even hurt, because when you're in the ring, you're in the zone, you're in the moment, and if they hit you in the face, you know, you are warmed up, it doesn't hurt. Sometimes if you get hit hard, or it's a good hit, it gets black, like if you blink your eyes, it gets black for a short bit because your brain took a hit, but it's nothing else than that, and then you're ready, you're continuing the fight. Or if you hit you hard on the leg, you can make, oh, that was a good one, then you're continuing. It's only start to hurt the day after, then you can feel, oh crap, my leg is, every time you open the fist, it's like, oh my arm, goddamn. But during the fight you don't feel anything, because of the adrenaline and your body is warm. It's when your body gets cold that it starts to hurt a little bit. But the more you train, the more you get used to it. So normal sparring, normal training, that doesn't hurt at all. But if I have a fight, I can feel the day after, okay, I took some hits, or he tried to do a lock, or he hit me with the leg kick. I can limp a little bit the day after, but it's not a big deal, actually.
I think it's also my experience that the adrenaline, just, you don't really feel it usually. But of course, like if you feel a bit dizzy or something, I think a big difference between the way that I spar and there's several, and the way you spar is that, especially if it's a fight, you keep going even though you've just been hit and you feel dizzy. I suppose there's some risks involved with concussions.
Well, there's always a risk involved with doing sports. If you do baseball, there's also a risk of getting the ball to the head. If you do football, there's a risk of breaking your ankle when you're running. There's always risk involved, but when you're doing a fight, you know your opponent is trying to hit you in one way or another, so you see the hit or the kick coming, so you're taking it in the right way. If he's throwing you, you know how to land, and you know I'm going to get thrown now. I can feel it. He's going to throw me. I know he's going to put me on my ass in 2 seconds. So the risk for injury isn't that great. The risk would be greater if I didn't know who was trying to hit me. Or in football, if someone suddenly bumps into me with the shoulder, I didn't see them because of looking at the ball, then the risk for injury is a lot bigger. So a lot of people actually think that when you're doing martial arts, you're gonna get hurt a lot, but if you look at the statistics, you can find statistics that says that in martial arts you don't get more hurt than in other sports.
That's thank you for sharing, and you're welcome. Happy to hear your perspective on all of this, and good luck with your career.
Thank you.